This is the Ronin of Philosophy, where I take a look at ideas and issues from a philosophical perspective and try to get at the heart of what drives them rather than take a side as to which one should be the correct one. Today I want to take a look at the idea of dialogue, education, and communication between various competing parties. A few years ago, when I was living in Rochester, New York, I was involved in several groups that were involved in interfaith and interethnic communication and dialogue between the various ethnic communities and faith communities in that area. This consisted of Muslims, Sikhs, Christians, groups from Ethiopia, Turkey, and so on. I was involved in this because I genuinely believed in the idea of seeking a peaceful resolution to a lot of the issues that were long-standing at the time. And for the most part, I greatly appreciated it and respected the opinions of the people who were involved in that. It was very helpful. I got a lot of insight into what drives their fears and beliefs, and just in terms of how to talk to people if people want to talk. The people who ran it had been doing this for like over 30 years, so I greatly respected their own thoughts and opinions on the matter. They tend to focus on connecting with commonalities within the groups, things that both sides wanted and believed in, rather than the various different viewpoints and sources of offense and miscommunication and whatnot. This made a lot of sense because all these communities underwent harsh stereotypes in society in Rochester at that time. Sikhs and Muslims were seen as potential terrorists, Christians were seen as far rights or far right to bees, and so on and so forth. So it was very kind of contentious and could explode at any particular point in time, depending on what the event that was happening, like a terrorist attack or, for example, the 2016 elections. As much as I respected their methods and how they went about this, though, there was one potential issue that I saw that didn't just apply to them, but to any group that wanted to discuss potential issues and try to get dialogue and resolution going through peaceful means. And that largely was what the people wanted in their differences, and two, they want to be educated in the first place. You see, all sides tend to believe in their own righteousness, that they are fighting a good fight for the right cause. Social justice warriors believe they are fighting for the rights of underspoken and oppressed communities like trans rights or racial liberties and stuff like that. And people who are conservative believe that they are supporting the right to live their own lives, own their own money, and basically not be told what to do by the government and face any kind of potential kind of control or manipulation by them. Everyone is right in their own eyes, basically. And for the most part, no one is intentionally, at least, coming out as directly evil or just wanting to, do something deliberately evil like, genocide or anything along those lines. For the most part, I emphasize. That being said, though, I found that there are three main reasons why communication and dialogue are so difficult for people to communicate on. And those three main reasons are fear of compromise, that the idea of that it's not our own problem, and that people just want their own happiness as well. Fear of compromise derives from the perceived perception that the righteousness of the cause will be affected if they even begin to question or consider what the other side believes or what the issues with them are. Questions can lead to cracks that for the first time they might be seen, or that on a certain level they were already aware of that and we're just trying to deny it. Therefore, many of us tend to lock it away and pretend it never existed, or tend to shout out all the louder trying to drown it out and just keep saying that we're right and you're fucking wrong, and that's that. It's the oldest rule in all conflict since humanity started fighting each other. You never sympathize with the enemy, you never consider their position or how they came to that position in the first place, and never ever see them as human beings with an equally legitimate and respectable intellect as yourself. The consequences that can result from these kind of compromises are tenets that can range from inaction because of that doubt to even converting to the other side and becoming even something worse, a traitor. Even if not done physically, you crush your enemy's positions, slam the door on their arguments, and do we need to go into why they're arguing that position in the first place? No, because we already know why. They're wrong, and that's that. The second point of contention is apathy, or, as I said earlier, it's not my problem. I'm not necessarily referring to a general lack of caring. There could be many reasons why a person would not want to educate themselves on conflicting positions. Some people are perfectly content with what they know or don't know. It's not inconveniencing their lifestyles, or it's not being intrusive. Or we may be caught up in other causes that we feel are not related to that at all. And dialogue often involves some extra effort as well, such as going into uncomfortable places or unfamiliar places in order to come to that piece of understanding. And a good chunk of human nature is to not do that. Other people feel they have too much going on in their lives. Rather than it being a luxury, it's about pressing concerns such as families, bills, and daily work that are consuming enough as it is. Trying to fit in something else as potentially upsetting as understanding an adversary's point of view would be difficult at best. I've seen this scenario play out in many of the communities in Rochester with the different ethnic points of view and religious points of view as well. Inner city black churches have been invited to participate in interfaith communities and oftentimes tend to refuse. The reason being that they feel that the issues of misunderstanding and persecution are too far removed from what blacks are struggling with in their own communities. At least that's what I've seen, and that's usually where it tends to end. Similarly, despite leading roles being taken by many religious leaders, it was always difficult to get average Muslims to participate as well, though it did happen. It was for similar reasons to city churches, and most suburban churches refused because they felt they knew enough about other religions and not doing harm to them. It was either outside their realm of concern or seen as going against the mission of converting people to Christ. And non-religious people just felt that they already were not prejudiced anyway. So between that and available time, many just chose to largely ignore it and didn't bother with it at all. While this is a very human response, this hierarchy of care becomes a problem when these seemingly foreign problems tend to crash into our worlds anyway, with no care as to whether or not we want to deal with it or not. We are suddenly stuck with confronting an issue or an enemy with little or no knowledge to them or why they're doing it or why it's there in the first place. And even then, we don't know what we may be misunderstanding, what we might just have plain wrong. This can be seen early on during Trump's presidency, where we laughed at many of Trump's supporters as being racist, dumb, violent, and etc. And for sure, the Capitol riots didn't help at all, in terms of that. But many other people were not like that. And I'm not saying that I'm a Trump supporter because I didn't vote for him. But I know people who are Trump supporters who are friends of mine, and they were far from the types who raided the Capitol when Biden came to power. Similarly, during the civil rights movement, the power that came from that made it able to last for like around 15 to 20 years was from different people of different backgrounds coming together to support a common cause. They had different backgrounds, different beliefs, and so on, and many of them had different ideas of how to achieve the same goals, but they all still had the same goal. And without that kind of common goal that people were striving towards, the movement would have died early on. The final obstacle, I believe, to communication and dialogue is happiness, or rather, the pursuit of happiness. Our society believes today that the goal of living is just basically being happy. So surround yourself with people who reinforce that, do activities and go places that foster it, and do whatever it is that you need to do in order to achieve your own happiness. And in and of itself, there's nothing wrong with that. It's a natural human emotion just as anger or love. However, the degree to which this can be taken can cause problems for dialogue because speaking to someone on the other side doesn't make us happy. If anything, it will probably make us unhappy. Yet, how often has life and other actions outside of our lives tend to force itself on us anyway, despite our desire for that happiness? It would be nice if we lived in a world that responded to what we wanted or didn't want, to essentially be gods, where we would have complete control of our lives. But that just isn't the case. And when those situations come upon us, where our happiness is challenged by a force that we can't control or that we do not foresee, we often let our anger and our grief dictate and control our reactions and vilify those that we believe have caused suffering to our happiness and interrupted it. Instead of a naturally occurring human expression, happiness can become a drug that we are so addicted to that we will do anything to hold on to it and preserve it, even persecuting others or allowing them to suffer in order to maintain or regain that happiness. Having said all those things, I believe in understanding people because the only other option is perpetual conflict. I believe in talking to other people who disagree with me because many times I have found myself wrongly thinking of them or why they took up that position in the first place. In fact, it may be something that I would have done myself if our positions had been switched. However, even though I believe in such lofty and noble practices, that doesn't mean that I ignore what obscures it as well. That would be a self-imposed sense of denial, a willful blindness. And when that occurs, why should the other side do anything or listen to anything I have to say? It only increases their pushback, the same hostility, and yes, can potentially end violently because it becomes a situation that humanity has come across too many times before. That the world simply is not big enough for both us and them, and therefore someone needs to go.